In the quiet town of Northville, a running trail was known to locals, a trail that held an eerie secret. Nestled amidst the serene beauty of nature, this running trail was like a vein that pulsed with a life of its own, a life that was shrouded in whispers of the supernatural. The locals called it the Forbidden Trail, a name that echoed the chilling tales associated with it. Legend had it that the trail was haunted, that the spirits of the lost and forgotten wandered along its winding paths. The stories varied, from glimpses of spectral figures in the corner of the eye, to chilling sounds that echoed in the stillness of the night. But one thing was consistent, a sense of dread that seemed to hang in the air like a dense fog, a feeling that made the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. Yet, for an avid runner like John, the Forbidden Trail was a tantalizing challenge. John was a man of logic, a man who dismissed the supernatural as mere superstition. The trail with its untouched beauty beckoned him, whispered promises of solitude and peace that he sought in running. Despite the warnings, despite the tales, John decided to conquer the Forbidden Trail. As he laced up his running shoes, he brushed off the lingering sense of unease. He looked at the trail, its meandering path disappearing into the thick woods. The trees stood like silent sentinels, their shadows dancing in the soft glow of the morning sun. The wind whispered through the leaves, carrying with it the scent of earth and the unspoken secrets of the trail. John took a deep breath, his heart pounding in his chest, not with fear, but with exhilaration. The trail was a challenge, a path untraveled, a mystery waiting to be unraveled. And as he took his first steps onto the Forbidden Trail, he could not have imagined the terror that awaited him. John was an experienced runner, but nothing could have prepared him for the chilling encounter on the Forbidden Trail. He was a seasoned athlete, his legs strong from countless marathons, his lungs conditioned to endure the harshest of terrains. Yet, on this particular day, he found himself pitted against an opponent unlike any other. As John set out on his run, the sun was shining, and a gentle breeze was playing with the leaves. The trail was as familiar to him as the back of his hand, but something felt different. The air was thick with an uncanny stillness, and the woods seemed to hold their breath. As he ran, he felt a prickling sensation at the nape of his neck, as if he was being watched. The further he ventured into the trail, the stronger the sensation became. It was like an unseen shadow, a phantom was trailing him, matching his every step with uncanny precision. He tried to shake off the feeling, attributing it to his overactive imagination. But then, he heard it. A whisper, so faint and yet so clear, it sent chills cascading down his spine. It was a voice, or rather, several voices, intertwined into an eerie symphony of whispers that seemed to echo from every direction. Despite the sun shining overhead, an inexplicable chill swept over him. It was a bone-deep coldness that made him shiver, a coldness that didn't belong to a warm, sunny day. His heart pounded in his chest, the rhythm echoing the unsettling whispers that seemed to be growing louder with each passing second. The feeling of being watched intensified. The unseen presence felt closer, almost breathing down his neck. His instincts screamed at him to run, to escape the invisible threat. And so he did. John ran, his heart pounding in his chest, his breath coming out in ragged gasps. He ran like he had never run before, the whispers growing louder, the unseen presence seemingly keeping up with his pace. He ran and ran, his fear fueling his speed, but no matter how fast he ran, the unseen entity seemed to always be just a step behind. With the unseen entity in close pursuit, John's peaceful run had turned into a desperate race for survival. John was no longer a casual jogger out for his daily exercise. He was a man on the run, thrust into a horror story that was all too real. His heart pounded like a drum in his chest, each beat echoing the steps of the unseen entity behind him. The Forbidden Trail, once a peaceful sanctuary, had become a nightmarish landscape. The once calming rustle of leaves now sounded like whispers of danger, and the gentle wind felt like icy fingers brushing against his skin. His muscles screamed in protest, but fear was a powerful motivator. It pushed him to run faster, to leap over fallen branches with an agility he didn't know he possessed. The adrenaline coursing through his veins was bitter and electrifying, a potent cocktail of terror and determination. Every gasp of breath he took was a plea for survival, each stride a desperate bid for freedom. The trail seemed to stretch on forever, a winding path of terror. But John pushed on, driven by the primal instinct to survive. He could feel the entity getting closer, its presence like a shadow that chilled his soul. But he didn't dare look back, didn't dare to give his fear a face. Instead, he focused on the end of the trail, the finish line of his terrifying marathon. And then, just as suddenly as it had started, it was over. John burst out of the forbidden trail, his lungs burning and his body trembling from exhaustion. He had escaped, he was safe. But as he looked back at the trail, he knew he would never be the same. The forbidden trail had marked him, its terror etched deep into his soul. John escaped the forbidden trail, but the terror of that day would forever haunt him. He made a promise to himself then and there. He would never return to the trail again. The memory of his escape, the adrenaline, the fear, the relief, would serve as a constant reminder of the horror that lurked in the shadows of the forbidden trail. Our second story takes us to the bustling city of New York, where a late-night runner encountered a shadowy figure that followed his every move. Meet Alex, a dedicated runner and a creature of the night. He ran not for competition or health, but to find solace in the quiet solitude of the city after dark. But on one fateful night, his routine jog took a chilling turn. As he rounded a corner on a familiar route, he noticed a figure in the distance. It was a shadowy silhouette that seemed to mimic his movements. A chill ran down his spine. He slowed his pace and so did the figure. He quickened his steps and the shadow did the same. It was like a dance, a macabre waltz in the dimly lit streets. Trying to shake off the eeriness, Alex turned onto a different path, hoping to lose the figure. But no matter how many turns he made, the shadow seemed to follow, always maintaining the same distance. His heart pounded in his chest, the rhythm of fear echoing in his ears. Desperate, he decided to confront the figure. He stopped, turned around and called out, only to be met with silence. The shadow had vanished. He let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. Was it all in his mind? He was about to shrug it off when he felt a cold breeze behind him. He turned around and there it was again, the shadow, closer than before. His blood ran cold. He was no longer alone in his late-night solitude. Fear gripped him, his legs moved on their own and he sprinted as if his life depended on it. The adrenaline kicked in, his heart pounded in his chest, but the shadow kept pace. As Alex sprinted towards safety, he couldn't shake off the feeling that the shadow runner was still out there, lurking in the dark. Our final story takes us to the historic city of Boston, where a marathon runner experienced a haunting that still sends chills down his spine. Meet Mike, an avid marathon runner who had trained relentlessly for the prestigious Boston Marathon. As he laced up his shoes and took his place at the starting line, he was consumed with a mixture of excitement and nervous energy. Little did he know, this race was going to be unlike any he had ever run before. As the marathon began, Mike fell into a steady rhythm, his heart pounding in synchrony with the thud of his shoes against the pavement. But as he passed the halfway mark, something strange started to happen. He began to see figures, spectral shapes running alongside him. They were translucent and ethereal, like echoes from the past. At first, Mike thought it was just the result of his exhaustion playing tricks on his mind. But as he continued, the apparitions became more distinct. He could see them in their vintage running gear, their faces etched with determination, mirroring his own. These were not just random phantoms, they were the spirits of past marathon runners, forever trapped in their final race. The sight was unsettling yet strangely compelling. It sent a shiver down Mike's spine, but he pushed on, the finish line his singular focus. The spectral runners seemed to spur him on, their presence a chilling reminder of the marathon's long and storied history.